Hello, good evening, and welcome back. This is the kind of journalism that I think we need more of, the kind of investigative work, and then, of course, taking it to court if necessary, in order to hold government to account. So, credit where it's due, and it's against the Conservatives, and it's brought about by the Greens, Lib Dem, and Labour. Rightly or wrongly, in the end, it is rightly. So what happened? Well, Matt Hancock broke the law by failing to reveal coronavirus PPE contracts worth billions of pounds, High Court rules. Because if they're spending more than £120,000, they have to divulge the details of the contract within 30 days. And of course, this hasn't happened. Now, of course, there can be desires for bringing this up because they do not like the Conservative Party, or they do not like Matt Hancock in particular. And if you're at all right wing, then you have to understand that you have to be squeaky clean because they will hold up anything against you. But if you've done something wrong, then you should suffer the consequences for that. And I know that ordinarily it doesn't go both ways, but I am not as tribal as some people are. Instead, I hold the Moguls more dear than I do the tribe. So a law project, good law, took legal action against the Department of Health and Social Care. The government is required by law to publish a contract award notice, and the Good Law Project argued there had been a dismal failure to comply, as there has been. And of course, this isn't the first time he's been in the news for thoughts of cronyism when it came to his old pub landlord, when he bought, I forget exactly how much worth of PPE from him and awarded him the contract, and it seems much more to be because this is an old friend of yours instead of what is necessarily best for the country. Now, if this was a private business taking on this endeavour, then you'd understand, okay, well, there seems to be perhaps a bad business venture and you'll suffer for it. Or it could be, no, this is a good business venture because it is somebody you have history with and therefore they are trustworthy. Either way, you'd let the market decide for itself and the results would come out. But when it comes to spending taxpayers' money, the rules are far more stringent. That isn't to say that you can't use the fact that you've got friends and trustworthy sources in order to do things that are better for everybody, but it has to be completely transparent. And that's where they failed here. And I'm all one for making government more transparent in all ways. So, Matt Hancock unlawfully failed to publish details of billions of pounds worth of coronavirus-related contracts, the High Court has ruled. The Good Law Project took legal action against the Department of Health and Social Care, DHSC, for its wholesale failure to disclose details of contracts agreed during the COVID-19 pandemic. The government is required by law to publish a contract award notice within 30 days of the award of any contracts for public goods or services worth more than £120,000. And yes, there's several billion, but of course it's split amongst different groups. And it's not just the £120,000 limit either. At a hearing early this month, the Good Law Project and 3 MPs, Labour's Demi Abrahams, the Green Party's Caroline Lucas, and Liberal Democrat Leila Moran, argued there had been a dismal failure by the DHC to comply with the obligation. They also claimed the government was breaching its own transparency policy, which requires the publication of details of public contracts worth more than £10,000. Quite a low figure considering all that's been going on, and considering everything that's going on, they do also state, we understand it's a difficult time and there has to be a lot of priority on getting people safe. Of course, we know that that's happening, and it's good to prioritise human safety, as that is a role of the government. In their belief, not to me at all, because you don't know where it should end. But that is their point, because of course they don't want to be seen as to downplay the COVID pandemic, because they need it to fearmonger you. So with that notwithstanding, they do still go on to say that there are still laws to be followed, even though it's a difficult time, that we can't lose sight of the wood for the trees when the pandemic is happening. We've still got to follow those laws that you passed beforehand, and 30 days is quite a long time. Government is huge with so many different departments that being able to actually publicise this and redact anything that is, too confidential in terms of being a state secret and its security threat then they can still publish the details as required within 30 days and fail to do so. And that is why, of course, you have an entire month in order to do this. So, they go on to say, the public were entitled to see who this money was going to, what it was being spent on, and how the relevant contracts were awarded. Yes, most certainly. We need to be able to hold our politicians to account. This was important not only so that competitors of those awarded contracts could understand whether the obligations had been breached, but also so that oversight bodies such as the National Audit Office, as well as Parliament and the public, could scrutinise and ask questions about this expenditure. Perfect. And punish them in the ballot box next election, as I think the majority of us intend to do anyway. Who's your second option, though? Good luck. We just need another party to actually successfully register. And they're still trying that. Mr. Justice Chamberlain said the situation the DHC faced in the first months of the pandemic was unprecedented when large quantities of goods and services had to be procured in very short timescales. The judge said it was understandable that attention was focused on procuring that was thought necessary to save lives, but he added the DHSC's historic failure to comply with the obligations to publish contracts because of the difficulties caused by the pandemic was an excuse, not a justification. And yes, that's completely correct. So what is the defence as to why it hasn't happened? There isn't really any. It's just we were too focused on getting this stuff done that we didn't have time to publish it, which is a very pathetic excuse. As they say, it is not a justification. So here we are. There are more details. Right. So Alex Bourne was his old pub landlord while he was running their cock in Thurlow, West Suffolk, a few hundred yards from the Conservative MP's constituent's home. The pair are also Facebook friends, for what it's worth. He later set up Hinpack, a packaging manufacturer, which is now supplying a distributor contracted by the NHS, with 2 million test tubes a week, as well as around 500,000 plastic funnels for test samples. How much the company is being paid is not yet known, but is something that should be made public. As I said at the start, could it be that a long-standing relationship is actually a good thing to build business on? Yes. Do we still, as the taxpayers, have a right to know where our money is being spent? Yes, we do. Don't try to hide it. It only looks bad if you hide it. If you're hiding something, it suggests that we can't think of how bad the truth is, because you would rather have the rumours spreading around than the truth coming out, and that is never a good look. The government has faced repeated claims of cronyism over its £18 billion rush to source PPE and other equipment during the COVID crisis, with ministers criticised for handing lucrative contracts to personal contacts with no experience in the sector. And that's where it falls down. Mr. Bourne admitted to exchanging personal WhatsApp messages with Mr. Hancock, but denied his connection helped win the business. Why? He said Hinpack was a British manufacturing success story that had retooled to meet an urgent demand. Well, by all means be honest to say, yes, the fact that I knew him definitely helped because my character and reputation was important. You don't have to be afraid of that. We all understand that part of the reason graduates from private education or top-end universities do so well is not so much for the education, but because of the contacts of who they make. It is there for the social networking, not for the education. That is understood, and it's not what you know, it's who you know. That is an old proverb. We understand that to be a fact. So you can actually acknowledge this. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. Okay. Good. And the same goes in reverse. If it seems to be good on paper, they say, no, because I know this person's history, and therefore if you look into these particular instances, you'll see that they're not trustworthy and would not be worth awarding the contract to, then fair enough. The sword cuts both ways. So the report, which came in last week, Spark claims the government had frittered away huge sums of public in flawed and uncompetitive contracts, sometimes buying useless PPE with the taxpayer now reaping the ruin. That's what government does. Uncompetitive contracts. Welcome to the NHS. In another case, Sabine McKinnam, a 23-year-old investor from Lyon, France, was given £880,000 to supply 55,000 coveralls despite not having any experience in the sector. She said she acted as a go-between for a wholesaler in Hong Kong and has since completed delivery of all the overalls priced at £16 each. Ms McKinnam said the coveralls cost £11 before the pandemic, but they charged £16 as market demand and rising cargo costs pushed up prices. Fair dues. They've honoured the contract. Lucky them. It's not their fault, it would be the government's fault then. Labour MP Rachel Reeves said that a select group have been given privileged access to the government. They love their buzzwords. And yes, of course they do. It's not for everybody, because not everybody has access to the resources that are required in order to complete a contract. But adding, the country deserves to have confidence their money is being spent effectively by the government. It isn't, and it never will be. So that's bullshit. And you're working for Labour, Miss Reeves. And to know without doubt that friends and donors to the Conservative Party aren't profiting from this pandemic. I would have thought that profit can actually be a good thing, because it means you're providing value to somebody else, provided the government isn't enforcing it, and that is the only way that monopolies can be formed. But provided that it is consensual contracts and agreements, free market capitalism all the way, then the only way you can garner wealth is by being able to provide something to somebody at a lower cost than they think it is worth, or the same cost. In that case, they will happily exchange their money for the services or products that you are providing. So, wealth can be used as a metric of success. Not the only one, but one. But Business Secretary Alex Sharma insisted he would not say sorry for working rapidly to secure supplies during the coronavirus crisis, and said, "We had to do an enormous amount of work very fast to secure PPE, and that's what we did, and I'm not going to apologise for the fact that, quite rightly, we made that effort." Yes, if you really wanted to respond really quickly, then when Taiwan was saying there's human-to-human transmission, and the World Health Organization decided to ignore it because it was just kowtowing to China, concurrently, when Xi Jinping and the rest of the CCP were telling their fascist state, because the corporations have a foothold in the government as well, or vice versa, to buy a PPE from around the world, then at that point you should have thought, no, actually, we're not going to get rid of ours just yet, and we're going to stockpile our own. But I guess you didn't want to act that quickly. It might be called racist. But that's it from me. That's as much as I'm covering today. So let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think that's enough for Halfcock? He's cocked it up a bit too much now, and it's time to show him the door. And that could be the door out of the building, or could be the prison door into jail. Either way, let me know down below. Always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, until next time, have a good one.